There's one skill, one precise ability that, if you truly master it, will make women stop viewing you as just another option and start feeling like walking away from you would actually cost them something real. And no, it's not your looks, not your money, not your charm, not your pickup lines, not your game. It goes deeper than all of that. It's more powerful, more instinctive, and if you use it the wrong way, it can backfire badly. Because power without emotional maturity doesn't create love, it creates chaos. Here's a quote that captures this perfectly. We suffer far more in our minds than in real life. Seneca. Why that quote? Because most men don't lose women to actual problems. They lose them to neediness, overthinking, fear, and emotional leakage. The silent behaviors that scream, please pick me. So, what's the one thing women are drawn to? Emotional self control. Not being cold, not being distant, not playing mind games, but calm, steady, grounded control over your reactions, especially when you care. Because a woman's desire doesn't attach to how much effort you show, it attaches to how you make her feel when things are uncertain. That's why you've seen this pattern that feels unfair. Some men barely try, yet women orbit around them like gravity. Other men do everything right, kind, attentive, supportive, yet still get ghosted, replaced, or quietly placed in the safe but not desired category. It's not because kindness is weak, it's because overinvesting often hides fear, and women sense fear the same way you smell smoke. Long before the fire is visible, when a man has emotional control, he sends a message without saying a word. I want you, but I don't need you to be okay. I'm here, but I won't beg. I can lead myself, which means I can lead a relationship. That mix creates something rare. Safety plus tension. Safety makes her trust you. Tension makes her want you. And if you want women to chase, here's the hard truth. Women chase what they can't fully predict, but they also chase what they deeply respect. So when you master emotional self control, you stop performing for love. You stop auditioning. You stop trying to convince. You become the man who chooses calmly. And that flips the entire dynamic. You move from chasing signals to becoming the signal, from reactive to intentional, from desperate to powerful, in the best way. Powerfully composed. Now, if this already struck a nerve, do the simple thing, like the video, because this is the kind of truth most men don't hear until it costs them years. And subscribe if you want real female psychology. Not surface level advice or fantasy tips, because next we're going to break down exactly how to practice this skill in real life situations. Texting, dates, silence, and conflict. So you don't just understand it, you actually embody it. 1. The misconception that quietly ruins most men. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men never hear, and it's the belief that silently destroys their chances without them ever realizing why. The majority of men assume attraction is about being wanted, about hearing her say yes, about quick replies, warm laughter, and frequent invitations as proof they're doing everything right. At first, that illusion feels powerful, almost addictive, because being wanted feeds the ego and gives that instant hit of validation that whispers, I've figured this out. Don't fall into that trap. Want is fragile. Want is temporary. Want is shallow by nature. A woman can want multiple things at the same time without feeling emotionally anchored to any of them, because want operates on the surface of female psychology, reacting to mood, convenience, novelty, and emotional climate. Today, she might want attention, tomorrow, reassurance, the next day, excitement. And none of those wants automatically create a lasting bond. They're preferences, not foundations. Menu options, not commitments. And anything that functions like a menu item can be replaced the moment something more appealing shows up. Be honest with yourself. You've seen it happen. A man is intensely wanted one week and quietly replaced the next. Not because he did something terribly wrong, but because he built everything on being wanted instead of understanding the deeper layers of female psychology. That's where so-called psychology tricks mislead men, teaching them how to spark interest but not how to maintain emotional gravity. Now, pay close attention because this is where the real shift begins. Need is different. Need doesn't ask for permission. Need doesn't negotiate. Need bypasses logic and settles directly into the emotional nervous system. When a woman truly needs something, it becomes part of how she regulates her inner world, how she soothes anxiety, finds grounding in chaos and relief in uncertainty. This isn't about control or manipulation. It's about a presence that stabilizes. When a man becomes emotionally grounding, when his energy brings clarity instead of noise and steadiness instead of pressure, he stops being an option she evaluates and becomes a constant she feels. That's female psychology at its core. Want fades because it's optional. Need endures because its absence creates discomfort. When something is genuinely needed, its removal feels disruptive, and both the mind and body will naturally try to restore that sense of balance. That's why wants shift so easily. A lifestyle, a personality vibe, a surface level attraction. All of it can be replaced with little resistance. Need is different. Need lingers. It pulls. It quietly calls her back even when she tries to move on. This is where most men unknowingly sabotage themselves. They work overtime just to be wanted. They become too available, too accommodating, endlessly responsive, believing effort automatically equals value. Don't make that mistake. Availability without boundaries signals replaceability. When you remove all friction, all tension, all emotional consequence, you teach her that life without you isn't destabilizing, just slightly less convenient. Be honest. Optional things are always the first to be dropped when priorities change. You have to stop trying to impress and start becoming grounding. Stop chasing reactions and start embodying emotional certainty. That one shift changes everything. When you stay calm where others get reactive, steady where others rush, and self-contained where others chase validation, you trigger something far deeper than basic attraction. This is where psychology tricks stop being gimmicks and start aligning with real female psychology. Women don't pursue what begs to be chosen. They're drawn to what feels essential, reliable, and emotionally stabilizing. That's the difference between being wanted and being desired long term. Be the man whose absence is felt, not because he demanded attention, but because his presence brought order, clarity, and emotional safety. That's how chasing reverses. That's how desire deepens. And that's how you stop being an option and start becoming a necessity. 2. The need shift changes everything. Not slightly, not slowly, completely. When attraction shifts from want to need, the relationship stops functioning like a negotiation and starts operating like gravity. Before that shift, a woman evaluates you logically. She compares, she measures, she weighs options the way someone scans items on a shelf. Is he better than the others? Does he check enough boxes? Is this worth my time? But after the shift, the questions change. And when the questions change, the game is over. She no longer asks how you look on paper. She asks who she becomes without you. How do I feel when he's gone? What happens to my emotional balance? What space opens up that I can't easily fill? And when she feels that gap, it's unsettling, not dramatic, not theatrical, quietly disruptive. Because the absence isn't neutral, it's uncomfortable. It throws off her internal stability in a way she can't just ignore. That's the moment attraction stops being optional. And this is exactly where many men lose their way. They assume effort creates attachment. It doesn't. Effort can earn appreciation, sure, but appreciation isn't desire, and desire isn't need. Women let go of what they merely want all the time. They move on smoothly, gracefully, without much regret, like last season's trend. But what they truly need, they circle back to. They think about it late at night. They protect it. They pursue it even when they can't fully explain why. That's the gap between trying to attract women and becoming unforgettable to them. Until you feel that difference in your gut, not just grasp it logically, you'll keep mistaking movement for real momentum. You'll confuse attention with influence. You'll believe consistency equals power. It doesn't. Power comes from emotional imprinting, not constant availability. Keep pouring effort into a connection that hasn't crossed the need threshold, and it will feel like pushing a stalled car uphill, draining, pointless, humbling. Now let's address the most misunderstood phrase in modern dating. I miss you. Men love comforting narratives, stories that protect their dignity, stories that explain pain without requiring real growth. She misses me because I treated her well, because I listened, because I showed up, because I was different from her past. It sounds noble, it feels mature, it reinforces the identity of a good man doing his best. But here's the uncomfortable reality. That story gives you zero leverage. Women don't attach to people the way men assume they do. They don't bond to resumes, personality traits, or logs of effort. They bond to emotional states, to how they feel in your presence, to what their nervous system learns when you're around. When she says, I miss you, she's not replaying your kindness like a highlight reel. She's reacting to a feeling she can no longer access. Something her body recognized. Something her mind depended on. Maybe it was calm, the kind that quieted her inner noise. Maybe it was excitement, a spark that made ordinary moments feel sharper. Maybe it was relief, a space where she didn't have to perform. Maybe it was tension, the good kind, the kind that keeps curiosity alive. Maybe it was validation, not empty flattery, but the real sense of being seen. Whatever it was, that emotional state became linked to you. That's how attachment forms, not through effort, but through experience. And this is where becoming a high-value man has nothing to do with arrogance or performance. It's about emotional leadership, about regulating yourself so completely that others feel different just by being near you. Don't chase reactions. Don't force connection. Don't try to manufacture longing. Stay grounded. Stay self-directed. Be emotionally steady. That's what creates contrast. That's what teaches her nervous system something new. That's how you learn to love without losing yourself, and how you make someone feel safe enough, curious enough, and engaged enough to lean in on their own. You have to stop trying to be missed and start being felt. Stop asking how to attract women and start asking what emotional state you consistently create. Stop trying to prove your worth and start embodying it. Do this one thing. Become the place where her emotions either settle or ignite in a way she can't replicate anywhere else. When you do that, chasing disappears. Comparison ends. Desire stops feeling like a decision. That's not a tactic. That's psychology. 3. The paradox that confuses men. Most men are puzzled by a paradox they see repeatedly, and it quietly erodes their confidence because it doesn't follow logical rules. Two men can approach the same woman in completely opposite ways and trigger totally different reactions. The man who does everything right often fades into the background, while the one who seems imperfect occupies her mind nonstop. One man shows up consistently, listens deeply, reassures constantly, offers emotional access on demand, and slowly becomes background noise in her world. Another man is less predictable, not emotionally overwhelming the space, slightly reserved, not always available, and somehow becomes the emotional gravity she can't ignore. The mistake most men make is assuming this outcome is about morality, kindness, or effort. It isn't. Attraction is not a reward system for good behavior. It's a response to emotional regulation. The man who becomes unforgettable is the one whose presence shifts how her nervous system feels in real time. When you understand that emotional dependency isn't created by giving more, but by becoming the environment where her inner chaos calms or her dormant feelings awaken, everything changes. Because the moment your presence either stabilizes her emotions or elevates her inner state in a way she can't reproduce alone, your absence creates imbalance. Not just sadness, but a subtle disequilibrium. And the human nervous system is wired to correct imbalance automatically. That's why logic often collapses in these moments and why she can fully recognize your imperfections intellectually while still feeling powerfully drawn to you. As Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the soul takes on the color of its thoughts, and emotion almost always outruns reason when the body is involved. This isn't manipulation, this is mechanics. It's ancient Stoic insight applied to modern relationships. And once you accept the truth most men resist, that she doesn't miss you as a person as much as she misses the emotional state she feels in your presence. You stop chasing validation and start positioning yourself wisely, because attraction isn't about being needed. It's about being irreplaceable as a source of emotional alignment. Seneca captured this perfectly when he said we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The man who sparks imagination, emotional contrast, and inner movement will always outcompete the man who tries to eliminate all tension. This is where masculine energy truly matters, not as force or control, but as grounded emotional leadership, the ability to stay centered, calm, and internally sufficient regardless of her reactions. When you are regulated, you help regulate others. When you are grounded, people feel both safe and energized around you. That's why the Stoic way isn't just a slogan, it's a strategy, a way of moving through life without chasing, explaining, or performing, letting your presence speak for itself. In a modern world where attention is scattered, emotions are overstimulated, and most people are quietly dysregulated, the man who embodies stillness becomes rare, and rarity creates value. So the instruction is simple but not easy. Stop trying to be unforgettable through effort and start becoming unforgettable through emotional impact. Stop asking what you can give and start asking what emotional state you create. Stop flooding the space and start holding it. Because when you become the place where calm returns or intensity awakens, comparison ends, rivals fade, and pursuit reverses naturally, quietly, almost invisibly at first, often before she even admits it to herself. This is how men who understand masculine energy apply ancient Stoic wisdom and live the core principles behind Stoicism. They stop chasing women forever and start being chosen without asking. 4. the four emotional voids women chase. Deep down, every woman carries some kind of emotional gap. Not a sign of weakness or damage, but a natural byproduct of modern life with all its relentless demands and contradictions. It's not that she's inherently flawed, it's that today's world stacks pressure in ways that slowly drain certain inner reserves. The constant balancing act of career goals, social expectations, family duties, self image upkeep, and the performance of independence creates quiet shortages in the places that matter most. She has to excel at work, stay composed socially, appear attractive but not needy, ambitious yet agreeable, all while navigating a digital world overflowing with comparison and curated perfection. Over time, something essential gets pushed aside, neglected, undernourished. This emotional void doesn't shout for attention. It whispers, subtly shaping her reactions, choices, and attractions without ever announcing itself. And here's the key insight: this void isn't defined by what she verbally says she wants. Those stated desires are often red herrings, surface level distractions. The real driver lies in what her nervous system actually craves, what her mind and body quietly long to restore after years of depletion. Through observation, study, and real world experience, these gaps can be distilled into four primary emotional voids that heavily influence female attraction patterns: validation, excitement, escape, and challenge. Not an endless list of random traits, just four core deficits that explain the majority of attraction dynamics. These aren't quirky personality extras. They're genuine emotional shortages created by routine monotony, social pressure, boredom from repetitive interactions, or constant exposure to predictable men who all start to blend into the same dull pattern. When one of these voids remains unfulfilled for too long, it generates a strong magnetic pull. That's the core of attraction in motion. If a man happens to fill that void, whether accidentally or intentionally, he doesn't just seem nice or special in a cliche way. He feels intriguing, hard to explain, almost essential. She might not even label it as attraction at first. It just feels like his presence is different, important, either calming her internal storms or electrifying her calm in ways she can't reproduce on her own. This is where real power dynamics in relationships begin to form. By becoming the one who fills her emotional void, you move beyond ordinary evaluation. You're no longer just another option being measured by height, income, or humor. Instead, you're compared against the discomfort of losing that emotional experience, the pain of that void reopening once you're gone. But be careful. This kind of influence isn't neutral. It creates dependency, and dependency can grow into attachment. And if left unchecked, attachment can slowly turn into obsession. The line between them is incredibly thin, and many men cross that line without even realizing it, only to end up trapped in an emotional dynamic they don't know how to handle. Understanding the void doesn't just explain attraction, it also reveals why things can slide into toxicity if you lack awareness. Now that you have the overview, the real question becomes, which void shapes her inner world the most? And how does recognizing it change the way you handle every interaction that follows? Let's break these voids down one by one, starting with validation, the most commonly mishandled element in the entire attraction playbook. Validation is deeply misunderstood. Too many men treat it like a volume control. More compliments, more reassurance, more ego boosts, assuming desire will automatically increase. At first, it might seem to work. She blushes, engages more, leans in closer, but then the dynamic shifts. Because constant validation doesn't create lasting attachment, it creates comfort that quickly becomes taken for granted. The human nervous system adapts to predictability. It starts tuning out what's always available. When validation becomes as consistent as running water, it loses its shine, its emotional weight. Women already live in a constant stream of evaluation, from social media likes to workplace feedback to dating app attention. Validation is everywhere, commodified and therefore devalued. Real influence lies in its rarity and selectivity. It should feel intentional, not automatic. Imagine this. She can't fully predict when your approval will come. Maybe it follows a vulnerable confession or a meaningful personal win. Her brain registers that unpredictability with a dopamine spike. Anticipation builds. She subtly adjusts her behavior not out of conscious effort to impress, but to experience that rewarding feeling again. Overwhelm her with nonstop praise, and you signal that your validation is cheap and easy to earn. Withhold it entirely, and you risk emotional distance and disconnection, but offer it with purpose, appearing and receding like ocean waves, and it becomes something she instinctively values and pursues. It's similar to training a muscle. Intermittent reinforcement builds far more strength than the constant pressure. Next comes excitement, true contrast, not chaos. Contrary to popular belief, most women aren't bored because their lives are empty or uneventful. Their emotional landscape is simply too flat, too predictable. Daily routines repeat. The same work tasks, the same small talk, the same recycled dating scripts from interchangeable men who all start to blur together. Excitement doesn't mean reckless behavior or nonstop adventure. It means introducing contrast, breaking monotony with unexpected emotional spikes. A man who creates those peaks through sharp humor, spontaneous plans, or charged moments cuts through that dull routine effortlessly. He doesn't overwhelm the space, he punctuates it. Teasing sparks playful tension. Unpredictability fuels curiosity. Mystery engages her imagination, letting her mind fill in the blanks on its own. And once her imagination is activated, building fantasies and emotional projections, you've moved beyond being just another entertainer and become a compelling emotional stimulus. At that point, the attachment isn't purely about you as a person. It's about the aliveness, the vibrancy, the emotional energy your presence consistently brings out in her. That sense of aliveness she feels becomes amplified in your presence. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Many women don't become addicted to men themselves. They become attached to the emotional highs those men create. Validation reassures her sense of worth, while excitement reawakens her spirit. Blend those two carefully without overdoing either, and you stop being just another option. You become a unique emotional experience, something apps, friends, or self-help advice can't replicate. At that point, attraction begins to sustain itself instead of needing your constant effort. Next is escape, the quiet powerhouse. Escape is often underestimated because it looks subtle, almost ordinary from the outside. It's not flashy like fireworks, but that subtlety is its hidden strength. Women are constantly on, managing appearances, juggling responsibilities, meeting endless expectations from work, friends, family, and even their own inner critic. Even relaxation can feel like another performance. Yoga sessions, spa days, all still tied to the pressure of staying composed. True spaces where she can completely let go are rare. When you become that space where she doesn't have to explain herself, manage impressions, or maintain composure, her body responds deeply. Muscles relax. Thoughts slow down. Mental noise softens. This isn't about fixing her problems like a repairman. It's about offering temporary refuge from them. You become the emotional exhale she craves, the reset her nervous system associates with peace. And because genuine relief is rare in an overstimulated, hyper-connected world, its value rises dramatically. That's when you shift from being a pleasant extra to feeling like a necessity. Finally, there's challenge. Boundaries, not jerk behavior. Challenge is the most misunderstood void because it's often confused with being distant or acting like a jerk, which is a shallow misinterpretation. Real challenge comes from resistance, not rudeness. The hard truth is that most men are too easy, overly transparent, overly eager, quick to give in. They overshare vulnerabilities too soon, invest disproportionately, and rush to prove their value before it's even earned. But ease can suffocate desire. People naturally value what requires investment. Effort signals importance. A man with clear boundaries, a full self-directed life, and a sense of internal stability naturally creates challenge, not through fake distance, but through authentic groundedness. He isn't dependent on her approval to feel secure. So when he offers himself selectively, it resonates on a deeper level. Scarcity here isn't about ghosting, it's about discernment. Your time, energy, and presence aren't default gifts. They're rewards earned through participation and investment. She can't assume entitlement. She must engage and pursue. This subtle friction sharpens her focus and raises your perceived value. Escape provides safety. Challenge delivers stimulation. Together, they create a powerful cycle. Relaxation interwoven with pursuit. Comfort mixed with intrigue. Once established, attraction begins to operate almost autonomously without forcing the issue. 5. The paradox that confuses men. Most men fail to notice where attraction quietly slips into danger, and it always begins the same way. Desire gradually hardening into obsession. Not overnight, not dramatically, but subtly, almost politely, until wanting her stops being playful excitement and becomes a need for emotional balance. This is where female psychology is brutally honest. When a man's internal stability depends on a woman's responses, he unknowingly cedes psychological leverage. Yes, that leverage can pull her closer, even during conflict, even during distance. But don't confuse short-term effectiveness with wisdom. Without self-control, psychological influence turns corrosive fast. Attraction becomes pressure. Tension becomes anxiety. Curiosity turns into quiet resentment. This is why insecure men ruin what they touch. Not because they desire too much, but because they fail to regulate themselves. They withhold affection to inflate ego, create emotional dependence to feel important, and then wonder why the connection collapses under its own weight. Obsession does not create safety. It creates fear-based bonds that slowly erode trust, distort communication, and turn interaction into a silent struggle for power. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men avoid. The most dangerous men aren't those without influence. They're the ones with influence and no restraint. Attraction isn't about doing more, talking more, or proving more. That's just noise. Real attraction is about positioning, placing yourself in her emotional world as irreplaceable, not through force, but through clarity. This is where a mature understanding of female psychology changes everything. In capable hands, tension isn't exploited, it's respected. Absence isn't weaponized, it's balanced. Advancement is paired with retreat, not confusion. True strength is knowing you don't need to create obsession just to feel whole. The moment you rely on obsession for validation, you've already lost your center. And without a center, no psychology tricks will save you. But when you shift from trying to impress her to understanding how dependency forms and why it destabilizes people, something powerful happens. You stop chasing, and gravity replaces effort. You stop striving to be wanted and instead become the source of an emotional experience she can't find anywhere else through calm presence, measured availability, and insight that sees beneath her behavior instead of reacting to it. This is where want and need separate clearly. Once you grasp that distinction, effort no longer equals value. Rejection loses its sting. Patterns emerge without emotional fog, and suddenly your control returns. Not control over her, but mastery over yourself. Your reactions become intentional, your boundaries firm, your availability selective, and your standards visible without needing to announce them. Ironically, this self-governance is what sustains attraction. Men who don't beg aren't ignored. Men who don't chase aren't forgotten. Men who understand leverage don't need to prove anything, they simply exist in alignment. And that alignment is disarming to the right women in the best possible way. Absence begins to register not as punishment, but as contrast. So if this reframes how you see attraction, don't rush past it. Sit with it. Share it with a brother stuck grinding for validation, confused by intense attachment or sudden pullbacks. Ask yourself the only question that truly changes the game. Not how do I make her want me, but why does my absence carry weight? The moment you understand that, everything shifts permanently. 6. Why silence is more powerful than reassurance. Most men panic the moment silence appears, and that panic quietly undermines their attraction without them even realizing it. A delayed reply, a pause after intimacy, or a slight pullback triggers an instinct to rush in, filling the space with reassurance, explanations, and emotional noise. Words like, "Did I do something wrong? I just want you to know how I feel. I don't want you to misunderstand." While these statements sound honest, what they actually communicate is anxiety, not connection. Don't do that. Silence isn't emptiness, it's space. And space is where desire either fades or grows stronger. This is where understanding female psychology makes all the difference. When a man can remain calm within that silence, when without chasing clarity, without trying to control the outcome, he sends a message far beyond words. It says his emotional center is stable, his sense of self intact, and his confidence unshakable. A man's confidence does not rely on constant validation. Be very clear about this. Women don't respond to emotional pressure. They respond to emotional safety laced with mystery. When you remain grounded in silence, something fascinating happens. Her nervous system leans forward instead of pulling away. She senses presence without demand, attention without expectation, and strength without force. A combination that's rare in modern dating and deeply magnetic. Don't mistake silence for ignoring or withdrawing. That's not the point. The point is to remain present without performing, to stay open without over-explaining yourself into a corner. Over-explaining isn't clarity, it's fear dressed as honesty, and fear never builds desire. It only creates reassurance loops that slowly drain attraction. Understand this. Reassurance given too early or too often signals that you're trying to manage her emotions instead of trusting your own stability. Female psychology is wired to detect that imbalance immediately. That's why many psychology tricks fail when applied mechanically rather than felt and embodied emotionally. Be steady. Be calm. Be comfortable with not knowing. When uncertainty is handled well, it transforms into intrigue, and intrigue is far more powerful than certainty forced too soon. This is one of the most overlooked psychology principles in attraction, the ability to hold space without filling it. When silence appears, don't rush to fix it. Don't label it as danger. Don't assume it means something negative. Instead, allow it to breathe. Let her feel into her own emotions. Attraction grows when she feels free to choose, not when she feels managed. This is a core principle of female psychology that most men never grasp. Many believe effort creates desire, but it doesn't. Emotional composure creates gravity. Be the man whose calm presence speaks louder than words, the man who does not crumble in ambiguity, the man who trusts that what is real does not require constant reinforcement. When you stop chasing clarity, clarity often comes looking for you. When you stop trying to force desire, desire begins to move toward you naturally, drawn to the quiet confidence that says, I am grounded, whether you stay or go. That mindset changes everything. It shifts the dynamic from pursuit to invitation, from tension to curiosity, and from neediness to self-respect. Never underestimate this. Silence carried with confidence is not passive, it's profoundly powerful. It is one of the deepest psychological principles rooted in female psychology. When you embody it consistently, you no longer need to convince, explain, or chase. Your emotional steadiness does the work for you. That's how attraction stops feeling fragile and starts feeling inevitable. 7. Why consistency is misunderstood by most men. Consistency does not mean constant availability. That's the first illusion you must drop. Most men believe that if they're always present, always texting back, always explaining themselves, always emotionally open, they are proving value. They aren't. They're proving predictability. And predictability kills tension. Don't confuse reliability with emotional overexposure. One builds trust, the other slowly erodes desire. True consistency is quieter, stronger, more deliberate. It's not about showing up everywhere all the time. It's about showing up the same way inside yourself, no matter what external situation tries to shake out of you. Be consistent in character, not in access. That's the shift most men never make. A man who reacts the same way every time becomes easy to read, needy when things feel close, anxious when distance appears, overly agreeable when challenged. He thinks he's being kind or flexible, but in reality, he hands over a predictable emotional script. Once a woman can read that script, tension fades, mystery disappears, and desire softens into comfort, then indifference. A man whose values are consistent is different. His standards don't bend under emotional pressure. His boundaries don't collapse just because he feels attraction. His reactions are measured, not impulsive. That man builds trust without boredom. She knows what he stands for, she knows where he draws the line, but she does not know exactly how he will respond emotionally in each moment. That balance matters because desire needs structure to feel safe, but it also needs uncertainty to stay alive. This is where many men misunderstand how to fall in love, both for themselves and for a woman. Love is not built by flooding someone with access. It is built by emotional stability paired with self-respect. Don't chase closeness. Be someone closeness naturally grows toward. Consistency of self outweighs consistency of presence. Think of it like a lighthouse, not a streetlight. A lighthouse doesn't chase ships. It doesn't move closer when the ocean gets rough. It stands firm, predictable in purpose. In common storms, that steadiness guides others toward it. That is the energy of a high-value man. Not loud, not performative, just solid. Be clear. Be grounded. Be selective with your emotional output. That is how you attract women without forcing anything. Don't explain yourself every time she pulls back. Don't overcorrect. When silence appears, don't rush to reassure. Be steady, be composed. Let your consistency live in your values, not in your availability. That restraint communicates confidence far louder than words ever could. Here's the paradox most men miss. When you're always accessible, your presence loses weight. When you're consistent in who you are but not always on demand, your presence gains gravity. She feels it when you enter a room. She notices it when you choose not to chase. She respects it before she even fully understands it. That is how desire grows without manipulation. That is how attraction stays alive without artificial effort. If you want to truly understand how to fall in love in a healthy way, stop outsourcing your emotional regulation. Handle your inner world first. Stability is attractive. Calm is memorable. Self-control is magnetic. This is why the high-value man is not reactive. He responds. He chooses. He does not leak emotion just to feel connected. And yes, this is exactly how you attract women long-term. Not by being everywhere, but by being anchored. Be predictable in your principles, unpredictable in your emotional dependency. That combination builds both safety and spark. At the same time, remember this. Desire doesn't grow from constant reassurance. It grows from trust combined with space. From knowing a man is solid without knowing you fully own him. That is real consistency. Once you embody it, you stop chasing because suddenly you don't have to. 8. Why self-respect quietly decides everything. The one thing that consistently makes women chase over time is self-respect. Not the superficial version people talk about online, but the lived, disciplined form rooted in masculine energy and stoic wisdom. The kind that shows up when no one is watching. When choosing yourself feels risky at the deepest level, women aren't responding to your charm, your generosity, or even your consistency. They're responding to how you treat yourself when your standards are tested. When a boundary creates silence, when walking away would feel harder than staying, every time you tolerate behavior that doesn't align with your values just to keep access, every time you over-explain instead of standing firm, every time you abandon your own rhythm to match hers, you silently communicate your self-evaluation. As Marcus Aurelius reminded us, how much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it? Emotional self-betrayal always costs more than temporary loneliness. This is where modern men get lost. They believe attraction is built through effort alone. In reality, it's built through self-command, through congruence, through the quiet confidence of a man who knows what he will and will not accept. That is pure stoicism applied to modern relationships. Self-respect is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't posture or threaten. It appears in what you do not chase, what you do not over-explain, and what you are calmly willing to let go of without resentment. Paradoxically, the man who is most comfortable losing a connection rather than losing himself becomes the man whose presence carries weight. As Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Women feel this alignment instinctively, not logically. Their nervous system responds to stability, not persuasion, and stability is born from masculine energy that is regulated, grounded, and internally directed, not dependent on outcomes or external validation. In modern life, this means you stop overanalyzing every gesture. You stop chasing reassurance. You stop trying to lock certainty too early. Instead, you lead yourself first, your time, your emotions, your standards. Lead at your own pace because true leadership always starts from within. This is where old Stoic wisdom transforms into practical power, not abstract philosophy. A man who can sit with uncertainty without collapsing into anxiety or overinvestment becomes magnetic, not because he withholds, but because he is whole. As Seneca wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Desperation erodes attraction faster than silence ever could. Here's the instruction you must hear clearly. Stop negotiating your self-respect for connection. Stop softening your boundaries to avoid discomfort. Stop proving your worth through effort. Attraction doesn't grow from convincing, it grows from coherence. Being a man whose actions, values, and limits align even under pressure. That alignment is felt as safety, not predictability, as strength, not rigidity. When masculine energy is consistently expressed through calm exits, measured responses, and self-directed choices, women no longer feel the need to test you endlessly. Your behavior already answers the question they unconsciously ask. Does this man abandon himself to keep me? When the answer is no, respect follows and desire finally has space to grow. Self-respect creates gravity, and gravity does not beg, it pulls slowly, steadily, inevitably. If you want to master this in modern life, apply it everywhere. In how you handle silence, how you respond to mixed signals, and how you walk away without drama. As Marcus Aurelius said, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. In other words, don't react, regulate. Do this long enough and you stop trying to make women chase you. Instead, you become the man they remember, the man they circle back to, the man whose presence lingers because self-respect is felt long after words fade. That is Stoic win in its truest form, living daily through old Stoic wisdom, expressed through masculine energy, until your life itself becomes the message. Conclusion: do this one thing to make women chase you forever. Unlock female psychology and desire secrets. If you've stayed until the end, absorb this slowly. This is what separates men who understand attraction from men who live it. Women aren't drawn to the man who proves the most, explains the most, or gives the most. They are drawn to the man who is emotionally governed, the man who doesn't leak anxiety in his words, who doesn't abandon himself to maintain access, who stays grounded when outcomes are uncertain. When you master emotional self-control, something fundamental shifts. You stop negotiating for attention, stop chasing reassurance, stop reacting to every fluctuation in energy. And in that stillness, your presence gains weight. Your absence gains meaning, not as a tactic, but as a natural outcome of self-respect. This is a truth most men never hear. Attraction doesn't deepen through effort alone. It deepens through emotional impact, through the way a woman's nervous system responds to you. Calm, awake, safe, engaged. When you become the place where her emotions settle or ignite in ways she cannot recreate elsewhere, you stop being an option. She evaluates and become a presence she feels. That is when chasing disappears. Not because you withheld, not because you manipulated, but because you led yourself first. Stop asking how to make a woman want you. Ask instead, are my standards solid? Do my boundaries hold under pressure? Is my silence calm or anxious? Does my presence bring clarity or noise? Become the man whose values don't bend when attraction is on the line. The man who can walk away without resentment. The man who chooses instead of hoping to be chosen. If this message hit home, take one simple step. Like the video because these truths save men years of confusion. Subscribe if you want to go deeper into real female psychology, masculine energy, and emotional mastery in modern dating. The goal isn't to make women chase you forever. The goal is to become so grounded, so self-directed, so internally stable that chasing is no longer necessary. When that happens, attraction stops feeling fragile and starts feeling inevitable.